the Gavel. I'm your host, Dave Barber, coming to you today from the House Lounge here inside the State House, Providence, Rhode Island. It's our first show of 2012, and at the very onset, I want to wish all of our viewers and all the citizens of the Ocean State the very best in this coming year. And it gives me a great deal of pleasure to welcome a lady that represents Barrington and a portion of East Providence, and I couldn't think of a more capable guest to have this new year than the Honorable Representative Joy Hearn. Representative Hearn, it's great to see you.
It's great to be here, Dave, and Happy New Year to you. It's great to start out the season on your show, so thank you for including me.
Thank you so much for coming. And although for you, you probably didn't feel like you had much of a recess this year, it's been, even a lot of the veterans, the people that have worked in this building for a long time that I've talked to said it was one of the busiest years in their memory, and I think you would probably support that.
I'd have to agree. We've been, pretty much flat out with being on finance. In the summer, we met and did testimony on the finance and the pension reform legislation, and kind of continued through the entire fall with that legislation to its conclusion.
Well, people are calling that legislation historic, and I think for good reason. And I think the jury's come back. The most of the Rhode Island citizens, in fact, a significant number, were supportive of what took place. You must be pleased with that outcome as well, since you worked so closely on it.
I'd have to say that it is historic, though tough. I mean, it did affect people, so pleased, I'm not sure is the word I'd use, but I would say that it was, legislation that was necessary, and it was, we did our due diligence and really were thoughtful about the process, and the ending was, what the state needed. So.
And you're a new member of the House Finance Committee. You listened to a lot of public testimony. Give our viewers a little perspective as to how that process worked. How much testimony did you ever put a pen to it and actually calculate how many hours of public testimony you took from the public? I know it was fairly exhausting.
It was probably over 30 hours of public testimony, and it was really heartfelt testimony. I mean, we heard from every contingent, kind of across the state, from business owners that said, we can't afford to be in this state. We need, to municipal officials, to the employees that were going to be directly affected by the changes. So we did, every contingent was heard from, and we certainly didn't cut down on their ability to speak from their heart. And, I think Chairman Mello did an incredible job in allowing people to speak their piece. And, I think that was an important piece of the whole debate.
Well, we, of course, carry the House Finance Committee on Capitol Television, and just from the volume of programming that generates, I know it has to be probably the busiest committee here in the building. And again, you take all of this public testimony, you listen to a myriad of people from all different walks of life. Does that testimony really affect change? Do the comments and the ideas and the suggestions and the viewpoints that the people make, do you think that they affected some change maybe in the original pension bill?
I think that, certainly the hours of testimony and kind of the thoughtful reflection of that testimony adds to a final bill that is, it changed a little on the edges, but certainly the fundamental pieces of the bill didn't change. But certainly we took into account some valued comments and some suggestions that the public made, and that was incorporated into the final bill.
I wasn't surprised really by the passage, especially when you had the leadership doing such an effective job of communicating the issue to the public and to the General Assembly. But I was a little surprised, I have to admit, by the margin of the victory of the passage of that legislation. How about you? What did you make of the margin?
Well, I think that the margin spoke to how vital it was to the state's future. And without it, I think we were facing a very real catastrophe. So I think that, you know, the Speaker did a great job, General Treasurer did a great job in communicating the real necessity of this kind of broad change. And I think that, you know, proved to be successful with the margin that it was passed by.
And you mentioned it was serious, and the challenges were significant. But the Brown University poll indicates that the overwhelming majority of Rhode Island citizens were pleased or supported the outcome. That has to be, taken into account. Before we started the taping today, you mentioned the Time magazine piece that really put a spotlight on the pension reform here in Rhode Island, and our General Treasurer, Gina Raimondo. What did you make of her role in this process? What was it like working so closely with her?
Well, I think she's, a real talent for Rhode Island to have. I think she was able to articulate a real problem and put it into terms and to make it so that it was really understood by constituents across the state and certainly by legislative leaders in the building. We were able, with her help, to take an issue that we were able to fix on teeny little pieces and really put it into a comprehensive package. And I think the Time magazine article really articulated what we as a Rhode Island state could do that the national, the people in Washington can't do, is really come together, have tough discussions and tough decisions on big issues. And I think for us, that's a real pat on the back, and I was delighted to see it.
I don't know her well, but from what I've gathered from her public testimony and from her many appearances in the press, she seems pretty matter-of-fact, kind of a no-nonsense individual. And I think when you have a situation that is as serious and as significant as our pension problem, that type of personality or that type of maybe work ethic was welcomed.
Yeah, I think to deliver the problem in a very analytical, math-based, strategy worked really well. And instead of taking the issue that is fraught with a lot of personal, passions, I guess, and to be able to break it down into clearly, this is the problem, it is a math problem. I thought she did a very successful job at demonstrating that.
Now, strategically, do you think it helped that the speaker decided to have a special fall session where you folks in the House were going to take on this task directly, and you were going to focus all of your attention and all of your energies on this problem? Was that helpful?
I think his decision to, I think Speaker Fox's decision to dedicate a whole special session to this one issue was completely the right decision. It allowed it to be taken out of the context of the hundreds of bills that make their play through the floor and really be able to focus and again have very tough discussions and leading to a very tough vote, but a necessary one. So I think due credit to him, that was a brilliant idea.
Yeah, and I think too, maybe a sidelight, I think the general public, it sent the right message to the general public. Mm-hmm. That this isn't going to be something that we're going to, breeze through quickly, and we're going to really dedicate some real earnest time to this problem, and to let the constituents know we're taking it seriously. We understand it's serious, and I think it sent the right message to Rhode Islanders. I
think it did, and I think it really, clarified for us that we're able to tackle some very tough decisions and and to do the right thing for the state. So
well listen, I hope maybe at least during this holiday season you got a couple of days to catch your breath, because you're going right back at it again this week, and again there still remains to be a lot of challenges, and one of those challenges has to be reforms to the independently run municipal pension plans. Do you hope that this will be addressed in the coming session of the General Assembly?
I hope that we're able to, kind of help the municipalities themselves address what is ultimately their plate full of problems. And, I look forward to kind of helping in that dialogue as, a member of the finance and certainly the group that helped to usher in the pension reform legislation.
You probably had a pretty good handle of what you're in for when you accepted that assignment, because the hours are very demanding with that House Finance Committee.
It's a full calendar, yeah.
And you have a full-time job. You're in
Yeah,
education, right?
Yeah, yeah.
So, I mean, you really are truly doing double duty. Now, as we talk about those municipal plans, let's turn our attention, if we could, Representative Hearn, for a moment, to the community of Central Falls. Now, the receiver there has come to an agreement with the police and fire retirees, and they're calling for a $2.6 million state payment over 5 years. Now, as a member of the all-important Finance Committee, I'm sure you'll be involved in these discussions of whether or not the state should even make such a commitment. You want to give us your thoughts on that?
Well, I had mentioned in a previous Projo article that I thought committing to that leads us on a slippery slope. I feel for the individual communities, but those were agreements made between the, communities and their unions. And at a certain point, we either have to say, this is where our budget dollars as a state are going to go, or we're going to continue to fund what we believe in within a state program are necessary to fund. And I think once we start with Central Falls, where do you draw a line in the sand and say we can't help your individual community? And so I would be very, very hesitant to kind of get on that bandwagon.
Yeah, because then, if you set that precedent, what about the next community?
Exactly.
That comes and makes that same appeal? Yeah. And we're talking about, again, a lot of great people in Central Falls. Good, good, solid
across
people.
The board, yeah.
But we're talking about a community that is, 1 square mile?
That's a teeny.
And they have all of these issues and all of these problems. Yeah, I would think you do have a tough assignment.
Yeah.
Where do you draw that line?
Where do you draw the line? And I think, to the communities and cities and towns across Rhode Island, they've got to have the exact same tough discussions and tough decisions that we as a state made with pension reform.
And again, now as you enter your second year on the Finance Committee, we're going to be doing the budget process again.
It's all over again.
Before you know it, the governor will be presenting his budget. How does the process work? What are your thoughts on this whole budget process?
Well, again, I've been up here for 3 years, and every year we face huge deficits, supplemental budgets. I would love to be in this building when the state does not have a fiscal crisis, but we continue to be in a real fiscal crisis. So it really is not about doing more. It is really about figuring out the finer, how to fine tune a budget that Rhode Islanders can afford. Taxes are not anybody's friend, tax increases, and we've got to get it to a place that Rhode Islanders can afford to be living in.
And if you believe the so-called economists and experts, I haven't heard anybody that is supposedly in the know say 2012 is going to be some kind of banner year for the United States, notwithstanding Rhode Island. The whole country, maybe we'll have some slight improvement, but nobody's saying, hey, this is going to be, reason to have a ticker tape parade. Things are going to get so much better. So again, it's going to be a tough year in 2012, and some are suggesting that the deficit is going to be projected to be at about $125 to $150 million.
Yeah.
So again, you're going to probably, my guess is, you're going to be looking at more cuts.
It gets really tough. It is a tough, tough time for the state. And I think, the dance is to find the place between making tough cuts and the appropriate cuts and still creating an environment that Rhode Islanders want to stay in Rhode Island, that we're able to attract businesses to Rhode Island, we get our employment down. It is a tough dance to do, and I think it's, one that will be the struggle in finance again this year.
And with a bad economy, you have more people
who are needy.
that are in need of public help in state programs. And again, that puts an additional burden on some of these agencies that may be looking at budgetary cuts from the state.
Yeah, I think it's, it just is tough. You get to the point where you can't cut too much because government needs to be a safety net. And it's, just as you said, the more people that need services, the government, you need to have the funds to address those services. So it is going to be a big, challenging budget year again.
What were your words? Taxes are never anybody's friend. Increase in taxes.
Exactly.
The governor last year was suggesting a sales tax expansion. I think the number was about 165 million that he felt that could generate by expanding our sales tax, increasing our sales tax essentially. Is that something that you think should be revisited in this coming budget year?
My approach has been less about increasing taxes. I mean, I would never say never, but to really look at individual programs and make sure that our investment is really coming back in terms of real goals. And, just like with our education system, we want our students, we want the money put into educating our students to have results. And I would say across the board in our state programs, we need to make sure that the money that we're investing in them has results. And so I would be more in favor of looking at the programs that are out there and making sure that each dollar that we're putting in social service funding is really coming out with a good result. So I'd be, never say never, but I would be less apt to raise taxes first. And
well, again, you allude to the importance of education, and I established that you know a lot about this particular topic. You have to be thrilled that part of the success of last year's budget had to be the complete funding of the educational funding formula. Everybody agreed that our system was broken here with the way we dispersed dollars to school committees across the state. That had to be, at least in your eyes, a real big step in the right direction.
That was a big step in the right direction, and I think we still need to be diligent. I mean, I think that one of Rhode Island's challenges is we commit to a program and then we, kind of change our mind year after year. And I think it's important that with the school aid funding formula that we stick with it. We just keep on funding it year after year, and it becomes less even anything on the table to be messed about. So I was pleased that the governor put that in the budget, and I look forward to it being in this year's budget as well.
And then another piece of good news was the state of Rhode Island receiving $50 million for early childhood education. 40 plus states competed for the dough.
Yeah.
Rhode Island, again, for its second year, came up with this huge windfall. One of only 6 states in the country that received it in 2 consecutive years. Everybody, I don't think there's a person watching the show right now that wouldn't say education's doggone important to any state. That's another big victory for Rhode Island.
Yeah, I think our education victories are really starting to make Rhode Island on the map, and certainly giving hope to those of us in education saying our efforts are working, that we're getting the recognition and funding that we need, that early education is so important to a student's success. So I think that all of these pieces are really working towards a good, strong education system in Rhode Island, a public education system that parents want to send their kids to, that people want to move to Rhode Island for. So,
well, I covered the press conference with Commissioner Gish, the governor, members of the General Assembly leadership, our Washington representatives, when this was announced. And one of the things, and this goes back to something you were talking about earlier, one of the elements that they want to put in place with this $50 million in this early education funding is they want to monitor, to evaluate the results, to make sure that we're getting the best bang for our buck. And I think that's good. Rather than just throwing money at something, they're going to really copiously monitor these dollars and evaluate how successful this program really is. I think that's going to keep people on their toes.
I think it's really important. I think people don't mind paying taxes. People don't mind supporting government when they feel that government is working. And I think those results, that tracking results, is important in every aspect of what we do in government.
And again, relying on your educational expertise, you serve as co-chair of a commission that's evaluating the effectiveness or the overall, how to overall implement electronic books in the classroom. Tell our viewers about that. That sounds very cutting edge. It sounds kind of exciting.
It is exciting, and it's been a really fun commission to be part of. It's looking at textbooks and ebooks and trying to figure out if there's not a better way to deliver the textbook piece of education in our public schools. And, you know, with technology advancements, it's night and day. And so hopefully with Rhode this next session, we'll be able to do some exciting things with kind of going electronic and getting our textbooks out of the bound book world and into
and let's
something more
face
modern.
it, textbooks get outdated. You know, can you imagine having an electronic book, and I don't claim to know much about them, but every year you just download the new book with the additions and changes and with our societal and cultural changes. That seems, not only will it be better for the student, but economically it has to be cheaper, and it has to be good for the environment because you're not printing all of these billions of pages every year.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's a win-win if we can figure out how to do it, you know, in a fiscally prudent way. I think it's, you know, kids are much more adaptive to that technology now, and it's the way that they learn, and it's the world they learn in. So I think, you know, it's a recognition of it's 2012 now, and, you know, this is the way to go. So.
And can you imagine how much lighter the kids' backpacks will be? Instead of carrying 5 or 6 books home,
Yeah.
They have one Nook, and it's in the backpack, or they're just carrying it in their hand. It would be efficient. And in higher education now, they're using virtual classrooms.
Oh, exactly.
Students are taking classes online in other parts of the country.
Yeah.
I think it would only make sense. And again, public education, as important as it is, it's still a pretty expensive
Yeah, I
proposition.
think that any time you can find, you know, if technology can help out with not only learning but an economic bottom line, it's a win-win. And so I'm, you know, excited about hopefully seeing that kind of cutting edge into the classrooms in Rhode Island.
That
So
would be really
would
cool. And, you know, speaking of higher ed, as if you don't do enough already, you serve on another commission that's studying the affordability of higher education, higher public education in Rhode Island. How's Rhode Island doing?
We're not doing great on it. And this, you know, I think just across the country, we're certainly not alone. It's, you know, the cost of college is expensive. And we really are looking at ways to try to figure out how we, as a government, can cut down on some of those costs. Because we don't want kids to get to the end of high school and feel like it's a financial mountain they can't climb. We need to be there. We need to encourage secondary education for our students, and, you know, one of the ways to do that is to making it more affordable and accessible. So I think it's been a fascinating commission to be on. That will continue to run, and we'll, you know, be hoping to make some legislation out in this session.
Well, and again, with the rapid pace of technology today, I was having dinner a few months ago with a woman who has a PhD from UCLA. She went to Mount Holyoke for her undergrad, master's at University of Missouri at Columbia, PhD UCLA. She's now an adjunct professor at UCLA. And she says the problem that higher education's having is the stuff that students are learning as freshmen, it's outdated by the time they're sophomores, because we're replicating and increasing data and information so quickly as a result of the World Wide Web and the speed of technology.
I mean, I think that that will always be the chase to, to kind of get to current information. But I think the challenge in Rhode Island in particular is to make sure that the kids, when they graduate as seniors from a public high school in Rhode Island, are able to do freshman work at a college level. And now we're finding within this commission study a very huge gap, and we really need to figure a way to address that, because the cost then is put on the students' shoulders to ramp up, and that's not, a cost that should be borne. They've gotten to the, senior year in high school, they should be able to do freshman year work.
With the 2012 session just getting underway, let me say 2 words that will spark the ears of every viewer watching right now. Car tax. Will this be something that you anticipate taking up this session, especially the way automobiles are evaluated to ascertain what the tax is going to be? I hear a lot of people squawking. Last week we had Chairman McNamara in that seat. He's very concerned about it and plans to take up the issue. Give me your feelings.
Well, I think that if you look at just the evaluation models, every city and town does it based on a different number. It's crazy, and I do think that it, needs to have some sense made of it. So I'm sure that this is going to be something that's on the plate this session in terms of trying to get a handle on what the best way to approach the car tax valuations is.
I know, too, in your district, you're known for holding a lot of community forums. You get together with the folks and listen to their concerns. And again, we all realize that times are tough. What are the people telling you these days? What kinds of things are you hearing?
I do constituent nights on Monday nights once a month, and I hear from, constituents who are out of work. I mean, unemployment is double digit in Rhode Island and really struggling to get down at all. So they just are really urging us to get this state so that we are more, business friendly, so businesses will want to be here, and a way to get this unemployment numbers down. So struggling unemployment is a big concern. Certainly the social, the safety net and making sure that it's there for the disabled is, been a big issue. And then there's just, the everyday constituents who just want to meet their representative and, chat about kind of what this building does and how important it is in their lives. So I think, it's been a great way for me to get to know a community.
If people that live in Barrington or the portion of East Providence that you represent want to find out more about these forums or learn about them, the time and place, location, where can they go where they can get this information?
Well, I've been putting it on the town website and also in the paper. So, I'll start back up in January. And they're usually 6 to 8 on Monday nights at the library.
Well, again, Tip O'Neill used to say all politics is local. What better way to get a handle on what the folks in your community are feeling? We have about 30 seconds. Representative Joy Hearn, do you have a couple of priorities that you want to get accomplished in 2012?
I think I would just like to get Rhode Island to a spot Rhode Islanders can afford to live, work here, be educated here. And just, make it a place that we're proud to be part of. So.
Well, to you and to all of your colleagues, we wish you the very best in the new year. Thanks for coming on today.
Thank you, and Happy New Year to you, Dave.
And thanks a million to you for watching. My name is Dave Barber. Remember, you heard it straight. And the Gavel.